Hey team, it's Mikki here. You're listening to Mikkipedia, and I am bringing this week some extra episodes in light of the fact that I am in Waikiki and in Kona at a sports medicine conference, and I'm here for the women's race of the World Championships in Ironman. So I'm super stoked to be here, and I'd love just to share some more insights really into the race, what's available at the expo, the general sort of vibe, but also, of course, the geeky sports medicine stuff. The geek out, though, starts with this episode, which I did with my mate, Rob Dallimore, all about wearables. We do a bit of a geeky deep dive into power meters, how to adjust for the heat, what some of the pros and cons are. And then we move on into heart rate monitors, what to look out for, what to avoid. We talk about running power meters, such as Stride, a new wearable that looks at core body temperature, what athletes should even think about or consider when wearing or wanting to look for wearables, and then also continuous glucose monitoring. Rob also talks about the heat training protocols that he uses with his athletes, and also, of course, we discuss how important it is to trust your intuition when it comes to training, recovering, and of course, racing. So those of you unfamiliar with Rob, he is a triathlon coach, a really old friend of mine, and he has an extensive background in endurance sports himself, having competed at a high level in running, duathlon, triathlon, and multisport. He's competed in 19 Ironman events and has lost count of the number of half Ironman and shorter distance triathlon races that he's competed in. He's a long history in the sport, as you will hear, having raced for over 20 years and coached for a very similar period of time. He has raced the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii, so he knows what is going on when we're out there, and has represented New Zealand at the age group long and Olympic distance World Championships numerous times. He has a professional background not only as a triathlon coach, but as a sports podiatrist, so he has the added benefit of these skills and a unique understanding of training with a focus on injury prevention and management. He really likes getting stuck into the analysis of training and race data, as you will hear as we discuss this stuff, such as power, heart rate, pace, heart rate variability, and a host of other things. So I think that those of you who are absolutely interested in endurance sport, triathlon particularly, and who are data geeks will really love this chat that I have with Rob, but also even someone like me who's certainly not data driven really learnt a lot and was interested in what Rob had to say all around this area. We'll have a couple of other chats across the week. This was done in the hotel room, so if there is background noise, that'll be what you sort of hear, because it's just in the moment and not a lot of editing, etc. has gone on. But Rob speaks so well, and I think that any sort of background noise certainly won't detract from the conversation that I have. Now, Rob can be found at foottraffic.com. and we will put links to him and his bio in the show notes. And just one thing I'd like to quickly tell you is that my mic dropped out near the end of Rob and my conversation. Thankfully though, he is the one with all of the gems, so you certainly will not be missing any of the super important stuff. For now though, please enjoy this extra episode of Mikkipedia. Okay, cool. So, Rob McD, thank you so much for taking time to speak to me today.
It's an honour.
I'm sure it is. I'm stoked because what I wanted to do with the podcast is give people a little bit more sort of athlete-oriented information since we're in Kona.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping this will be the first of a few chats we have this week on just, everything sort of Kona related. And particularly today, what I wanted to kick off with is a little bit about wearables. And I think I've seen you at different points with at least 2, if not more, on your person as we go out for a run or you're on a bike or whatever. So I thought, hey, you'd be the perfect person to chat about.
Yeah, I often get called out for the amount of gadgets that I've got on me. It's not my fault. I just want to try everything out.
That's it, right? See, and it's your enthusiasm about it which made me think you'd be perfect. So for people who don't know who you are, can you give us a bit of a background on you as both your experience, both obviously professionally, but also as an athlete?
Sure. So I'm a triathlon coach. I've got a background in, I was initially a sports podiatrist for 10 years and a long time ago. And I shut the sports podiatry clinic door one day, and the next day I opened up a triathlon coaching business door. So I transitioned pretty quickly into coaching athletes for triathlon because it's something I've done for nearly 30 years now, and I've got a pretty good grasp on how to get through the training for triathlon events, and in particular long course Ironman type events that obviously we're here for now. And just over those years, I've learnt a lot around how an age grouper can optimize their training by utilizing the equipment that's available to them.
Yeah.
And it's amazing so I've been to Kona. I've raced it 3 times. I've been to watch it another probably half dozen times, maybe 4 or 5 times. And it's amazing over those years as I've been back how people have adapted to the equipment that's available to them.
Yeah.
Now the first time I ever raced Kona was in 2007, and there was no such thing as a power meter on an age grouper's bike. Some of the professionals had them, but the age groupers didn't really have them because they were so cost prohibitive and really no one knew what to do with them. I was actually given by a company that I was associated with at the time, I was given a kind of a prototype power meter which used wind resistance to determine the power output. And it was a clunky old thing that hung off the front of the handlebars, and it wouldn't work on rough roads.
Yeah.
and it was, to be honest, I didn't even use it in the race because I actually looked at it and thought, I don't know what this number means.
So a couple of questions. One, the elite athletes had them. Did they have them racing as well as training? Like, would it have been like the old style GPS, which was like a massive battery, or was it actually smaller and wouldn't have contributed to too much additional weight?
Yeah, I mean, back then they were pretty clunky, archaic devices that were cabled. They had cable connection from the power meter to the head unit. And that was always a bit of a difficult thing to set up. The batteries wouldn't last a particularly long time. You'd have to send the machine away to get batteries replaced.
Yeah.
And they were super expensive. And really, some professionals used them, but actually a lot of professionals didn't use them because, again, there just wasn't much information around what to do with it. And for a professional athlete who's doing a race, they just want to do the race. That's the intention is for them to race the race, not to race within themselves.
Yeah.
It's changed a little bit as we know more and more about training, but it's quite a famous situation. And I think it was 91 and 92 Ironman Hawaii World Champs where a well-known Finnish athlete called Pauli Kuru, who was sponsored by Polar at the time. And Polar, as we know now, is a big player in the power meter market, in the heart rate monitor market. But back then, it was a reasonably new technology, and he was a slave to the power meter.
Yeah.
A slave to the heart rate monitor, and it was quite famous in that if you watch the coverage of it, the old footage of it, you could tell that he had more in the tank, but he was always holding back because his heart rate monitor was telling him that don't go over this value.
Yeah.
And he ended up coming second, and it was probably a race. Mark Allen won it, and Mark Allen was the greatest triathlete of all times at that time. But, did this guy cost himself the win by being a slave to the heart rate monitor, not necessarily knowing what the body could do, but looking at it and going, I need to stick within my limits because of this.
Yeah.
Now we know training and racing in the heat has such a wide, has so much variability on your heart rate that, he was Finnish, so he was from a northern hemisphere, almost Arctic country, that maybe his training was all done in reasonably moderate and temperate climates, where as soon as he got to the heat of Kona, was his heart rate giving him a different number because he hadn't trained in those conditions before and he didn't know what he was looking at. And you've got to ask yourself, was that the time that technology overtook the race? And it probably was. And I'm sure that's happened since, where athletes have followed a number, not understanding what that number means and how to manipulate it, or how to manipulate themselves around it, and have seen a race go up the road.
Okay.
Or vice versa, maybe followed it too closely, not listening to the signals within their body, and not perhaps slowing down like they should have.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to, doesn't it, the being an intuitive athlete or coach as well, and taking not only that objective data, but also integrating the really important rate of perceived exertion or whatever else you want to use that also determines, subjectively how the athlete is feeling.
Yeah, I mean, to a well-trained athlete, the most reliable metering device is their brain, and their body's endocrine system, and understanding what signals their body is giving in terms of pain, effort, sweat rate, stuff like that. Just perceiving those things is probably more accurate than any device that you can plug in or stick to yourself. There's quite a famous quote where people are where it's a paralysis by analysis, and so there's so much information to analyze, you go nowhere.
Yeah,
you're stuck in this one spot. And saying that, I mean, we're talking about technology here, and I've got all these gadgets in front of me, but so you do take it in context, because you can't use this stuff without studying it and learning it, how it works. So most of the bits and pieces that we've got in front of me now, I've spent time analysing it and learning it and figuring out the idiosyncrasies of it, and how it works for me and how it might work for others.
Yeah.
Rather than just plugging it in and putting it on and just going, well, this is what other people say it should be, so this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So can I just ask you, before we move on to the one which I want to talk about, Stride, but before we move on to that, question, so if someone is got a standard power meter on their trainer and they use that to determine their training zones or whatnot, then they're over here and they're racing in Kona, how is it adjusted? This is like a 101 question, but how is that data adjusted to account for the change in environment or anything else, or the humidity and things like that?
It's more than a 101 question. This is like a 1.15 question.
Okay.
We're a long way down the track with this stuff, which is great, because right now we're talking about it's not uncommon for age groupers these days to have two bikes with two power meters, and a smart trainer, which has its own power meter. And so you've got three different devices. One may be measuring from the crank, let's say it's a Quark or an SRM. One the other bike might be measuring from the pedals, which if it's a Favero or a Garmin pedal power meter, and the smart trainer is measuring from the rear of the drivetrain. So you've got three different devices measuring a number that, as an athlete, you look at and you live and die by this number. But there's so many variables and differences between those three measuring devices that you actually can't go, well, my indoor trainer says I'm putting out this many watts, therefore when I'm on the road using my power meter pedals, I'm putting out the same watts, because you're not. There's so many mechanical pieces between those two devices, let alone the reliability and the accuracy of the software to actually say that these things are exact. There are tests that you can do to measure how accurate they are and give you some relief in knowing that these two devices are similar.
Yeah.
And I've done those tests. I've got three different bikes, two different power meters on each one. I've got a smart trainer, and I've done the tests, and I've seen that all of them are pretty close. Less than 1% difference, which is it's awesome. It's great.
So Rob, you've done these tests on yourself. Would that number hold true for any athlete, or is it something which, so any athlete that you coach, you're going to tell them to do these particular tests so that you can work out what their individual sort of variation
Yeah,
is?
a lot of the time we'll individualize it and look at the equipment the athlete's got and go, well, sometimes, I mean, if it's as simple as a power pedal, you can actually put those pedals on, you can use those pedals as your power meter source on the indoor trainer and disregard what the smart trainer is giving you. So you fixed up that issue there. But yeah, most of the times where I've got athletes using different power meters, we'll go about some tests to try and figure out how accurate they are, and their power zones that we've got generated in the training software will have a range for them to work to. Because actually, you don't, like, even though it's lovely to work to a specific number, the body runs on a continuum and it just can't do that number. And I've always said to someone, I might get a report back from an athlete to say, I didn't hit my target watts today, and I look at it and I'm like, you're in the vicinity.
Yeah,
like
totally.
you're actually getting a training effect. Let's not worry about how accurate it was. It's like, yeah, you were close to it. I mean, you're either under it or below it, and either way, I'm happy.
And that's how I've been doing my pacing for my marathon. I'm like, well, my marathon pace is anywhere from 4:40 to 4:50.
Yeah.
On a given day, depending, and I feel like that is that at the end of that marathon, if I'm able to stick within that pace, even though the actual number at the end is probably quite different between a 4:40 per kilometre pace versus 4:50, but I know that sort of I should be reasonably happy regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, and the other thing is, come race day, if you've dealt with the taper and you've got the nutritional side of things sorted out, the body is going to fall into place when the race comes around. Yeah, but you're lucky. I'm lucky because we've done enough to know that I'm going to run a good time today because I can feel it. I guess other athletes will struggle because it's like, what if I can't hit my power? I can't hit my pace in training. How do I know I can do it in racing?
Totally, actually, and it is. It's like you rock on up to a start. You wake up, and I remember a couple of races. One of my Rotorua marathon, I think maybe the second time I'd done it, I was out there gunning to do a better time, knowing I wouldn't win it because LTH was running that year, and a range of other amazing runners, but I knew that I knew that I'd done the training to be able to do a better time, which could have been my first sub 3, but I remember waking up and just going, it's not my day today. You just know it, even though you don't want to talk yourself out of it before you've even begun. You also can recognize enough what's going on that things are either good or bad. So then, Rob, how would you determine, how is it determined your power for these type of climates if you're not used to it?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because anyone who trains Southern Hemisphere, New Zealand, Australia, we're in winter. Come here and you're in the middle of summer, or the heat of it's actually not in the middle, but it's a lot hotter, and that's so there's a couple of things. There's the physiological impact is obviously is real, and you feel it, but I also am really in tune with the psychological side of it as well, and just not talking yourself out of still being able to do your best in these conditions. Like, you haven't trained and raced in this heat before, but the only thing that's stopping you doing that is your ability to think smartly on the day and understand that things are going to be affected, but if I'm positive, if I'm confident the whole way through, and if I do everything smart, and if I tick all the boxes in terms of hydration and cooling and fueling and pacing, then there's no reason why you can't turn up to Kona and have a phenomenal race and a phenomenal performance. And we've seen it year in, year out from New Zealand athletes that have gone there and done very well.
Yeah.
So there are some things that I prepare my athletes for and getting to that stage. And the first one is certainly the mental side of it, and saying, you've got to be clear of mind, you've got to be understanding where you are right in that point in time, and knowing that what you're doing right now is the best thing for you to get to the finish in your best possible shape, and dealing with that right then before you think of anything else. But then in terms of the training side of it, we will do, if anyone's got accessibility to the AUT heat chamber, we go into a heat protocol training. So the Auckland-based athletes have done that. And that's a hugely effective way to train. And the protocol for it is pretty low in terms of the impact it can provide.
Yeah.
So it's a low stress, highly effective way of adapting to these conditions.
Okay.
It's low stress after it, but during it, it's incredibly difficult and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the effects that you get from it is so great that heat training is the one thing that will set you up for a good performance here.
What about just a sauna? Because that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, saunas are amazing. And saunas at the right time of your training, which in most cases will be immediately after your workout, going into a sauna for 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And not hydrating before it.
Yes.
And that's a real mental test, eh? And I reckon that strengthens the brain as much as anything, like sauna battles.
Yeah, I agree.
There's someone else who comes in, you try to stay longer.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing the right things after it and hydrating yourself, and you haven't pushed yourself past the limits, it's a hugely effective thing. And you can use your heart rate monitor to actually measure the impact of the sauna. So you'll get in there, and some people will hit aerobic threshold sitting on a sauna, doing nothing.
Yeah.
And if you can monitor it and follow that progress over a series of days or weeks, you might actually see that my heart rate doesn't get as high after 15 minutes in the sauna. I'm beginning to adapt to the heat.
Okay, so because that's me, you've just absolutely nailed that to a T. One, I do mental battles with Cam Langsford. I always want to beat him in this one. Me, obviously.
Of course.
Of course. And two is that my heart rate, and this is actually, we'll segue to heart rate after this, because I only use my Garmin. I've only ever used my Garmin wristwatch. And what I find with it is that when I'm running, it immediately goes to like 150 to 180 is my zone, to the point that I've actually set my zones up to be higher, so I'm not constantly overreaching according to my watch. Because physiologically, that's always been the way. I just haven't been able, I never hold a low sort of heart rate. I wouldn't know what 130 running even would feel. I'd have to walk to be 130. But when I'm in the sauna, before I go on to my next point, is it only ever gets to, it's only ever high if I come in from a run, and then it might drop a little bit and then go up a little bit more, but never to the extent that I'm actually sort of running. But it's certainly adapted.
There is that effect that you're still burning and you're still cooking after a workout.
Yeah.
And that's often the most effective. The most efficient time of carbohydrate usage is immediately after you work out, that post-exercise stage. So if you are in a sauna straight away, then the effects are massive. And some athletes have called sauna or heat training the poor athletes altitude training.
Oh, nice.
You don't have to go to an altitude camp. You can just step into a sauna.
Cool.
And it's effective. But circling back a little bit, so talking about how to prepare an athlete for their power zones or their power pacing, that's where perceived effort becomes so handy, because like, for example, I've got an athlete who's in Cambridge, and Cambridge in the middle of winter is not easy to train for, Hawaii. So his training has been basically, we'll have a range of power to work to, we'll have a heart rate to monitor, but in the end, it's, if you feel you can hold this effort for 5 hours that the bike ride's going to take you, then that's the right effort. And then we'll get to Hawaii, so he's here now, and touch on some race-specific intervals based on how you're feeling in Hawaii, and from there we'll get the information on what the power will be. So I haven't actually spoken to my athletes and what their power targets will be for race day, because I haven't seen how they're coping in the heat.
Yeah.
So it's a discussion that we'll have probably 2 days out.
Yeah.
But I know that their training up to now has been, well, I feel like this is going to be my pace.
Yeah, cool.
And I'll look at it discreetly and go and think to myself, hey, probably a little bit hot there, so let's pull it back a little bit. Because what you do find is you get up onto the road and you settle into your rhythm, and your power meter is suddenly reading quite low, and you think, it's not very good, I've got to push harder. So you push harder, but what the athletes don't often consider is that the higher the temperature, the higher your core body temperature, the less power you can put out as an athlete.
Yeah.
So if you can cool your body down during the race, or not so much an Ironman before it, but in shorter distances before it, your ability to put out power during the race is a lot better. So putting an athlete into a race like this, understanding that you're not going to do the same power that you do at Ironman New Zealand.
Yeah.
But so you'll do less power. Your heart rate is going to be higher because of the effect of the heat. but your speed's probably going to be higher because the road's a lot better as well.
Okay.
So you get this whole thing of the athlete coming back and going, man, I was sitting on 45k an hour at 175 watts and my heart rate was like 150. It's like, these numbers are completely different to what I would expect.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I would expect, because there's so many, this is such a different place to Ironman New Zealand that, you need to go into it with a little bit of an open mind to just wait to see how you feel about it. So once we sort of know how the body is going to adapt and react to these conditions, then we can start putting that plan together. So I would expect if I was to turn up to Ironman here and I sit at 210 watts for an Ironman New Zealand, I'll probably look to be about 195 to 200 watts here. So let's say 5% less.
Yeah, but you may go at a similar speed because of the different environment, like the roads, the different
probably
like
faster.
that.
Yeah, like everyone talks about the wind here, and I'm like, yeah, it's windy, but you're doing 40k an hour into it because the roads are so smooth.
Yeah, interesting.
But the other thing is the effect of the heat and the conditions on the run is so much greater than it is on the bike that we almost need to go into the bike underperforming.
Yes.
To know that who cares if you ride 5 hours?
Yeah.
And you probably, you could have gone, you probably went 10 minutes quicker than you should have because the roads are so fast. And it's so easy to get into that rhythm. If you ride so much quicker than you would expect to, how can you expect yourself to run better?
Yeah.
And so many athletes we see will underperform on the run because they've just put that little bit too much effort out on the bike.
Yeah.
So really in Kona, it's a running race from about 20k.
Yeah, okay.
Up until then, it's just wait.
Yeah, and that must be super hard.
It's horrible.
For the athletes. So, Rob, can we chat then about heart rate monitors? Because as I said, I'm pretty sure that regardless of what mine says, however I measure it, I'm pretty sure that the wrist-based wearables aren't that accurate. People always go by them, and it's the only one that I've got to use because I hate a chest strap. So what is it about the wrist wearable that makes it so inaccurate?
Well, I'll preface this with the great term that I use. It's there's only one thing worse than no data is the wrong data.
Yeah.
And so we say that by because with the wrist heart rate monitors, initially when they came out, I thought this is great. We've got something here which means people who don't like wearing a chest strap can actually use a heart rate monitor that is accurate.
Yeah.
And the first few ones were not great. As companies improved and developed their hardware, they came out with better devices, and the software improved and the accuracy improved. But in the end, it doesn't take much. If you look at how the watch sits on your wrist, right in front of it, there's a big chunky bone.
Yes.
And some people it's more prominent than others. It only takes a small tilt of that wrist for that bone to push your watch up, and then for a little bit of light to get underneath it. And as soon as that light gets under there, that alters the signal from the heart rate. So the LED lights in behind the watch are reading a different signal because there's light that's getting let in there. So it's basically like a dark room for a photographer. As soon as you let a little light in, it's all wrong. It's messed up. So there's that. Then so I sort of thought, well, what's a good way around it? You wear your watch a little bit further up your arm. You could do that. A little bit uncomfortable, but weird. Put it on a bit tighter. That's not particularly comfortable.
No.
So then you just get to the point of, well, I'm just going to go back to the chest strap, because actually in the end the chest strap was always accurate because it was always on. It was always easy to wear, and pretty basic. There were some problems with chest straps, and it was basically in the way they were manufactured. Is they would often get funny signals from high tension power lines, and there was all these rumours around. Some people, if they've got a hairy chest, it doesn't work as well, or high tension lines would affect the signal, or even static electricity and friction from a t-shirt would affect them. So. And you would see some wildly unusual figures, and maybe it was the battery was running out, that sort of stuff. So again, then you look at it and think, well, how accurate is a chest strap?
Yeah. And you say they're easy to wear. I totally disagree.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Well, they're not easy when you're running. When you're cycling, they're all right. Yeah. And so I still wear a chest strap when I'm riding because it's no problem. It's not an issue for me then. But what I have got here is this cool little device called a Polar Verity Sense.
Yeah.
And this is a great heart rate monitor. Now, I'll jump ahead. I'll jump back a little bit. Polar have probably the best chest strap in the market. It's called the H10.
Okay.
And that's in terms of accuracy is probably one of the best heart rate monitors you can get from a chest jack perspective.
Yeah.
Really, really good battery life. Really easy to use, and they last for ages and ages. My H10 is probably coming off along 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I know Garmin and Wahoo have similar things as well, but I've heard good and bad about their stuff. I mean, the fact that maybe they have some issues just around reliability.
Yeah.
And sometimes they pack up a little bit sooner. But my Polar one, it's always seemed to have been super reliable. So, but then I got this Verity Sense, which is an armband type. Now it's an optical, so you can see when I turn it on, you get these little lights coming in.
Like under my watch.
Yep, like under the watch. But then when it's on your arm, it's on nice and tight.
Yeah. Not
too tight because it can be adjusted, but there's no light getting under there. And when you have it on your arm, not like your wrist where you've got movement, your arm's always pretty much in the same place, except for moving backwards and forwards. But there's no actual physical movement where it's going to get light exposure underneath it. So that's a wicked little unit, and I've used this for all my workouts since, and it's never dropped out or anything.
Amazing.
It's great because it's USB chargeable.
Yeah.
So now we don't have that issue of having to find a 2032 battery to put into a heart rate monitor.
Yes.
You can just check on the app how much battery life in it. Sweet, there's enough to get through this run, or I'll put it on my put on charge, and it charges up really quickly, and the battery life is really long. There's a couple other things that it's got within it that is quite good for coaches, is that inside that, when you clip it out, you can see there's that ring around inside the unit. Now that's actually an antenna. So a coach can stand in one part of the track, and an athlete can be running around it, and that antenna will still send the signal to them. So there's an app on the phone, you can connect to the unit, you can see the live heart rate data from an athlete who's running around the track.
Yeah.
So it would work in cycling velodromes, it would work in
track
tracks. Yep. So that's a really, really cool innovation. The other thing I really like about it is, and this is the other great thing, it's got this clip. Again, it's got a antenna hoop in there.
Yeah.
And you clip it in, and it becomes a swim heart rate monitor.
Amazing.
And so that clips onto your goggles.
Yeah.
Now, I don't use it for open water because it hasn't got a GPS track to it.
Yeah.
But I use it for pool training.
Yeah.
And clips on your goggles, sits inside your head, and it even detects heart rate through my swim cap, which that blew my mind because I thought, how the hell does it do that? But it does it.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna question.
Yeah.
It seems spot on accurate. And you can set a pull distance. You can connect it to the phone app, set the pull distance, and it measures how far you're swimming in your workout.
Oh my goodness.
So you get out of it, and maybe it measures it 1 or 2 laps, either long or short.
Yeah.
But it's always right in the vicinity.
Yeah.
So I am actually in awe of this little unit. It's really, really cool. I would use it in triathlon. I wouldn't use it in the open water because I don't want to get it knocked off.
Yeah.
For one thing, it's pretty sturdy, but it could easily get knocked off. But I would use it in the run leg of an Ironman because I've quite often taken my chest strap off because it's just been so annoying and uncomfortable. The other thing, so a little bit talking about open water swimming. So we use our watches obviously for open water swim.
Yeah. And
so often I come back and an athlete will go, they'll do a 7.3 on Ironman, and it's a 2K swim or 3.8K swim. They'll come back and they're like, I must be wildly off course because the swim was 600 meters long or something, or I must swim the course short because it was short. And what you got to understand is, again, it's only as good as the information that's been provided.
Yeah. And
if you think about it, if your watch is out of the water, it's got a GPS signal. If it's in the water, it hasn't got a GPS signal.
Of course.
So. And it depends on the sampling rate of how quickly it pulls that GPS signal from the satellite to your watch as to how accurate that measurement will be.
Yeah.
And then the GPS, it really doesn't know how. We're not using NASA level, US military level GPS here. It doesn't really know that you're on the spot. You could be anywhere, maybe 20 meter diameter, away from where you actually are. So that's often why there's inaccuracies in data when you take a measurement from a swim. I always tell people you just don't rely on the watch telling you what's accurate.
And it's the same with the run as well, right?
Same with the running, yeah.
I remember with Topor 50K, getting to, or you go around to the headland, and they said it. No, they didn't actually say it. I got to the aid station just before you head back down, and I thought I had maybe 6K to go, and it was 3K or something, because they'd lost 3K whilst we were going around, and that was the best news of my life. I know.
And the other thing is, if you're riding beside somebody, you're running beside somebody, and you look at your data afterwards, and one person's distance is wildly different to yours, or the elevation is wildly different. Again, if you take that scenario where you're running on a trail and it's twisty-turny and it doesn't pick up those differences, it might pick it up on one person, it might not on the other person.
Yes.
And the other thing is, if you're running on a steep trail, and we talk about the accuracy of GPS maybe being within that 20 metres. 20 metres away, you could be 300 metres down a ravine or something, and it thinks, oh, we're down there, and suddenly we're back up here, and that's why the altitude can be so different.
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to that thing of how useful is this data if we don't know how accurate it is. So don't be a slave to the numbers, but use the numbers wisely and understand what they give us.
It makes sense. So with that amazing heart rate monitor, which I saw you wear this morning, which I'm totally down with an armband.
Yeah.
You said that even though it was polar, it would connect to my Garmin watch.
Yeah. So it's Bluetooth.
Okay.
Low energy Bluetooth. So it's got a really, really long battery life, and it will connect to any other Bluetooth compatible device.
Amazing.
So Garmin, Polar, Wahoo, Apple, all those. And it's got offline recording, which is the other cool thing. So even if you don't have your watch, it'll still record your workout, and then you come back afterwards and it'll upload it. So it hasn't got GPS, but it'll still see that you've done a workout. There's some data there. It'll put it onto the app.
So you just need to turn it on, put it on, go for it, and then you can do all the sort of uploading and everything later. Yeah,
when you come back. It actually automatically uploads. As soon as you turn it off, it goes into sync mode. Yeah. And it looks for your phone. Yeah. And if it hasn't found your phone, then it will just turn off. And if it has, it'll send the data straight to it.
How much is that, Rob?
I think that's $190, I think.
Oh, that is well worth it.
Yeah, they're so worth it. And like I say, battery life is awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're in the market for a more accurate heart rate monitor, then the Polar Verity is really good. But Polar actually say the most accurate one of theirs is the H10 chest strap. So obviously they think that there's more to the chest strap than the armband. Yeah. But I haven't seen enough in the armband to say, I'm not happy with it. Like, I'm perfectly happy with the information it's giving. Yeah, cool. And the ease of use and the reliability is really good. So that's a good option.
Okay, so I do want to ask you about two more, and the other one is the one that you were just playing around with, and that's Core.
Yes.
And I've not heard of Core before, which is unsurprising because I'm not much of a gadget person. But can you talk us through what Core is?
Well, Core, these are interesting. This is quite new, and I was contacted by, I'll give him a bit of a shout out, Barry Stevens at Domestique.
Oh yeah.
Who hires out smart trainers and all sorts of little gadgets and stuff like that, and for people's indoor training. And he's got access to some of these pretty cool devices. So this is the Core Body Sense. And as you can see, I just clipped it off my heart rate strap there. Yeah. So what it does, is it attaches to your heart rate strap. The most accurate position for it is to be directly next to your chest. But as I said, I don't use a chest strap when I'm running, so I attach it to my armband, which I still think is pretty close. But talking to Will O'Connor at the Rotorua Marathon, apparently you do lose a little bit of body heat through the limbs, but probably not enough to be concerned. Okay. But there is actually an adhesive patch you can put on it, and it will stick to your body.
Oh, good idea.
Which I haven't used yet, but I'll give that a go one day. So what it does is it's a non-invasive external measurement of core temperature. Obviously, there's other ways of doing it, and which aren't as comfortable, but this one you can do real time during workout body temperature monitoring. Yeah. Now, the really interesting thing about this is we come back to that discussion of heat training. Yes. Now, and I haven't had this long enough to really dive into the details of it, but we all have our own optimal range to train at and body temperatures. Yeah. Some people might be quite adapted to heat, so they can operate for higher body temperatures than others. And so what you're supposed to be able to do with this is do a workout, and it's a set protocol to determine what your body temperature range is. And from there you can, at the moment, with the device I'm using, I retrospectively look at how effective a workout was. But with some Garmin and Wahoo have real-time body temperature monitoring. So on my Wahoo unit on my bike, I can actually see what my real-time temperature is. On my Polar, it doesn't have a connection with the Polar, so I don't get real-time heat training. But with your Garmin, it will. So so you can actually be running along and you can see what your core body temperature is, which is a massive thing. I mean, we race in the heat, and you see people collapse during a race and from the effects of heat, and you just wonder to yourself, if you had that knowledge that I'm overheating here, I'm in trouble, I'm getting out of my optimal zone into a danger zone, I need to employ some cooling strategies or slow down. How much would that have affected people's races?
And I think that's such a valid point, because as much as we talk about experienced athletes being in tune with how they feeling and how they're operating, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to then take the next steps to actually change what's in front of them, particularly if you are highly competitive or you're sort of quite myopic about your goal. Like you might think, I think I'm overcooking it, but then it's very easy to talk yourself out of making changes to the current strategy. You're not that flexible. Yeah,
exactly. So
having that data could be a real game.
It could be. The interesting thing with this is, I mean, and I've done quite a few workouts with it. Yeah. And I want to get to the point where I'm actually in an overheating state, because I really want to see what that felt like at the time, and how do I perceive that, and how effective, how much impact did it have on the performance? And I haven't actually got to there, so I'm quite good in the heat, and I just wonder if my body's quite efficient.
Well, maybe it's an AUT season or 3.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. So I recorded it today in our run, and it was pretty warm, but it wasn't crazy.
28 degrees I had it.
28, right? Yeah. And now my body temperature capped out at 38.1. Okay. Which is not massive. Like I've done indoor trainer sessions. For example, earlier this month, I did an indoor trainer session, and I hit 38.6. Okay. So, and when I'm on my indoor trainer, I've got 2 fans, and I don't often just wear a light singlet over the top. So heaps of cooling going on, but working real hard, because it was a Zwift race. And I was actually at a hotter state than I was today in real world hot climate. Yeah. So you can see different situations affect people quite differently.
What was your baseline, Rob?
Well, when I put it on, it was 30. It was just under 38, so probably 37.8, 37.7. And today when I put it on, it was baseline would have been probably 36.8. So most of us are around 37 to 38 degrees. I think is probably pretty normal. So I mean, and when you're exercising, you're going into the low to mid 38s, maybe high. When you're getting up around 40, that's when you know you're in trouble. So there's actually quite a lot of room for me to move before I'm in a state that I've got to be concerned. And like I said, I haven't actually got that high yet. I haven't even got over 39, which I'm hoping I can go out and do a workout while we're here.
And then you'll get there. Yeah. So do you, I imagine that using a temperature gauge, like an ear temperature gauge, and calibrating it, and just to see what the difference is how it's reading it on your arm versus, that would be quite
that'd be interesting. Yeah, I probably should do that. That'd be really interesting to see. Because, like, again, this is some information that I don't know enough about, and how useful this information will be. But the technology and the equipment's there, and if you've got the time, and if you've got the ability to use it and try it out and do some comparison, some calibration, the use of it could be huge. Like, it'd be so effective. And so I know, and these are expensive. This is an expensive little unit.
How much?
So I think it's around $500.
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't, and I didn't have it on my strap properly one day because it's got a clip, and I thought I don't need the clip, and I was running along and it fell off, and I almost lost it. I was running along Iraqi boardwalk and I almost lost it into the water.
Mate.
And I thought that's not a good move.
No.
So I used the clip from now on.
Yeah.
I mean, they are expensive, but it's one of those things that you weigh up the pros and cons of it, and actually, if you're wanting to get the most out of yourself and perform at your absolute best, then those are one of the things that you consider. Well, this is probably quite a good spend. But yeah, it's very, very new technology, but it's actually pretty cool, and I'm really looking forward to trying it in the real world heat and seeing actually what it can do. And then when I get home, I'll get a bit more range, and then I can do some more. I haven't done the indoor training protocol yet to try and find my zones, but I will be able to do that and compare it to how it was when we were running here, and go, actually the training I was doing here, I wasn't going anywhere near my optimal zone, and I wasn't anywhere near my danger zone.
Well, to be fair, you and I we'll be running together tomorrow, and you will not be getting near your danger zone. The intensity is not going to be that high. Now, so finally, before we move on to stride, did Dr. Will O'Connor rate core, or does he think, as you've sort of suggested, that this is great and now we just need more data and more information?
Yeah, we both sort of said something. We haven't had it long enough.
Yeah. But
we're really interested to see what it could do.
Yeah, cool.
But it would be hard to train an athlete to a body temperature number, because I think it's hard to get people into that state of high body temperature. Yeah. And how useful that would be, I'm not too sure. Yeah. But I guess if someone was wanting to do some of their own heat training, and knowing that to be optimal, they need to be at a certain body temperature, then they could set up their environment with their indoor trainer, and whether or not they use a fan or they keep some jacket, a jacket on, or some leg warmers, long leggings, and maybe that way then they can know, all right, I need to get my body temperature to about here, and that's where I'm actually optimizing my heat training. Yeah, so I prefer, if anyone does have one of these of my athletes, I'll probably get them to do that protocol, and then just advise them that this is the body temperature that you need to be working at to be effective. And if you're not in that body temperature, then it's not having the desired effect. Okay. So you've got to take strategies to get there.
Then I guess if we sort of circle back to my power question earlier, if you had that data and you knew that this was the potential that you could get at a temperature that they might experience here, then they'll have a better understanding of where their power might sit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you come back to that and go, well, this is what I'm showing in my home lab. Yeah. So it should be what it's doing in real life.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, I just have to warn people with heat training that it's it does sound like a great thing to do, but there are some dangers with it. Yeah. You can do too much. You don't, and there is and I think the team at AUT would say the same thing. There is a diminishing return over a certain period of time. Yeah. So coming into Kona, the heat protocol starts about 3 weeks out of them arriving, not prior to the race. So do you need to be doing heat training through your off season? Probably not. Yeah. So how effective is this thing through that phase? Probably not that effective. Yeah. But if you and the other thing with training in the heat is the protocol for the workouts. It's all low intensity. Yeah. Like you're on the trainer, and in AUT they set it to 36 degrees, 60% humidity, and you're riding at about 50% of your threshold power, and your heart rate's already like 160, 170, 180. Yes. So you soon realise I don't need to ride any harder than this. Yeah. Doing this for an hour and a half is absolute torture. Yeah. But I'm getting massive gains from it. So yeah, with people who do and investigate heat training, just be aware that it's not all sexy and hard out training. It's just sitting on the bike for a long time at very, very low intensity. Yeah. Torturing yourself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Rob, you mentioned, we were just chatting about where this technology is. And of course, when we were last here in Kona, which was 3 years ago, I believe actually it was before 3 years ago. I can't remember when Stride came to the market. It might have actually been 2018.
Yeah, it was before that.
And you were an early adopter to Stride, the power meter for runners. And at that time, you were very much on that same page of, we don't really know enough about it. It could be useful. I'm giving it a go. And here you are still using it.
Yeah, so it's funny actually. It started ages ago, and version 1 was a heart rate strap, a unit on a heart rate monitor, and so what it would do is it would measure. It had accelerometers in it, and it would measure the movement of your body in the different planes, and it would measure how far you went, what your body weight was, and therefore how much power was required, or what that movement at speed related to power output. So it would create this value. And being a chest strap, it was less accurate than a foot pod. Now this was back in about 2000 and, I'll probably say 2010.
Okay.
And it was funny because I was going through Rebel Sport in Tauranga, and I saw they had one on sale, and it was real cheap. And I thought, yeah, this is real cheap. And I reckon it was because they didn't actually know what it was. So I went and bought it, and I got it, and I was like, this is kind of cool. But it was not quite there. And the guys at Stride, I get in touch with them a lot. They would have said the same thing. But they came out with a foot pod, which makes a lot more sense because it's attached to your shoe, and your shoe is the source of the movement, and it's the most accurate thing. It's the closest to the ground. And the foot pod was great because it would still, you'd still use your body weight, you'd still calibrate it to your body weight, and that would provide you with a power figure. And it was a good unit. What it didn't do was it wouldn't equate for wind. So you'd be running along with the tailwind and going quite fast.
Amazing, I love that feeling.
Yeah, going fast, but then the power meter's looking at it going, this guy's smashing it. He's putting out heaps of watts. So your power meter would be really high, power reading would be high, and then the turn around, go into the headwind, going creeping along, and it's thinking, this guy's going super slow, so the power meter's really low, and actually the power that you're putting out was way higher. So that made things real difficult, and accuracy was pretty poor at that time.
When was that?
That was must have been around 2012, 2013, I think. Okay. And then they, I don't know how they do it, but they came out with this new device which has got this little hole in the front, and that hole, you can't get it filled up with air, with dirt, because it affects it. That hole measures how much air is going through the device.
Oh, amazing.
And now it would determine the air resistance as your foot's moving through wind, which is coming towards you. So a headwind creates more resistance, tailwind creates less resistance, and it would therefore know that, right, this person's, a certain percentage of the air resistance is related to the wind. Okay. And so now when you look at the data from the run, you can actually see how much air resistance was applied to the output that you're doing for that run. Okay, so it's got some raw data, and then it's got wind adjusted data. Yeah. Amazing. And which now comes back to if I'm in a race and it's a headwind, there's so much more benefit in being at the back of a pack of runners than there is at being in the front, and it makes your race strategy so much more improved because I'm just saving so much energy here. Okay, but I don't have a Stride, and I would already know that. Yeah, that's why a lot of the time it's we're just telling ourselves what we already know. Yeah. But it's nice. It's nice to have a figure to go back and I remember that section of that course, and it was real windy, and I was doing 5% less work than I would have if I was at the front of the group. I agree. Yeah. And I can see pretty cool. You would really rate some of that information. And now they've come out with a new one, and it comes out in November. I've already ordered it. Yeah. It's a little bit more expensive than this one, but it's a lot more accurate. So what this wouldn't do is it wouldn't accurately measure sprint power. Okay. So if you're doing like 10-second hill sprints and stuff like that, it wouldn't pick up that value so quickly. So you'd start doing an effort, and 5 or 6 seconds into it, you look at your watch and it would say you're doing 180 watts, and then suddenly it would go up to 400. And so it's tidied that up. So it's going to be a lot more accurate. So it doesn't make much difference for endurance athletes like us. But I think what you'll start seeing now is sprinters utilising it. Yeah. They brought out some wild claim that we're going to start seeing some sub 9 second 100 meters. Oh. And this was years and years ago, and I thought, whatever, maybe. But now I'm actually thinking, I can understand how they can see that now, because if you're getting millisecond accurate information, then someone who's training for a sprint event could probably get some benefit from using this sort of thing. Yeah. So we might start seeing that coming through in more sprint type athletes.
So you just said that you don't think endurance runners would benefit as much, but actually I was just thinking about myself going up Air Street or Baz doing like hill repeats for his ultra running.
Yeah.
Like I think there you would, you know, like because we often talk about, well, it's not pace, it's intensity when we're going up these hills. So don't worry so much that you're at 6 minutes. Okay, 7.5 minutes. Worry more about where your heart rate is at, or maybe with a device like that, sort of where your power is at.
Yeah, and it is really accurate for that. Like, you know, I do hill repeats. We've got a favourite hill that I do it on, and I can just dial into a power, and in my mind it's like, well, this is the effort for the run, and I'll look at my watch at the top of the hill, and the average power for that segment was exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So, and because I've used it enough, I now know. But for those people who are new to it, it's a really, really good tool for intervals. And it's a really, really good, it's a brilliant tool for racing, particularly triathlon racing, where the run leg is less about being in the race, but more about being in your own race. Yeah. Racing a marathon, if you wanted to win the race, you've got to be at the front of the group. Yeah. I haven't won a marathon, but you have. So you can tell me what it's like. But if you're wanting to go for a personal best time, or you're wanting to beat a time target, you can look at the information and go, well, to do this time, I need to run at this power. Yeah. So if you're running along 3Ks into it and you're 15 watts over your target power, why are you doing that? You know, how's that going to last? You got to slow down. And it is that accurate that that doing that will yield those results. And super easy to get people to negative splits with this. Because all you do is you say, run it at 5 watts less than your target for the first half, run it at 5 watts over your target for the second half. And then as you get close to the finish line, if you're feeling good, you're always going to pick it up anyway. Yeah. And suddenly people pop under their marathon targets with a minute negative split, that sort of thing.
See, I feel like knowing that information would be an easier buy-in than, say, running 3 seconds slower, which is essentially the same thing, but you're using instead a pace rather than a power outlet. Maybe it's just because I've never used power before, because as a runner, I mean, that's been my only option. I've not bothered. Yeah. But if for someone to say, okay, Mikki, well, if you just run at 4:53s, then you'll do a negative split. I would intellectualize that. Yeah. But I would find it difficult to run slower, because I'd be like, oh, not sure. I don't know. I might actually, if I didn't rely on pace, I might actually buy into it.
It's super easy to tell yourself to knock 5 watts off, because you don't know what you're doing on a climb in terms of output anyway. Yeah. I did an interesting self-experiment at Rotorua Marathon. So I wanted to run under 3 hours, and I ran with the 3 hour pacer, and I won't blame him for ruining my race, but I'll probably blame my crappy strategy in that we were going, it's quite hilly around the back. We were going up, like my power target was 300 watts. Yeah. All I had to do was 300 watts, no problem. Now we're running up those hills, and I was looking at my watch going, I was running along going, this is pretty hard to keep up this 3 hour pacer. Looked at my watch, I'm doing 350 watts. Oh, and I'm like, you know in your mind that this is the wrong thing to do. So why don't you slow down? I'm not going to slow down because the guy's there. I need to follow him. And
so that's your competitive strength.
Exactly. So, and then down the other side, because it's going downhill, the power was a lot less. Yeah. What I should have done is slowed up on the climb and pushed harder on the down. Yeah. And had an even number. And everything that I know and everything that I've told myself for every run I've done, I chucked it out the window for this race. But it was a great experiment to say to myself, well, now that actually it does have that much impact.
And actually, what you just described is pretty much almost every athlete out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you do use these devices, actually create a plan and stick to it, because the plan will work if you know what you've told yourself, for what you created. Yeah. So that was a really, really good experiment. I'm actually glad it happened, because now I can come away from it and have that much more confidence in telling my athletes that this is what you'll do today. Yeah. And you go about doing everything sensible to get yourself to that finish line in your best shape. And if you stick to this number, this is the time I think we can do.
So, Rob, you mentioned that a new device is out in November. Do you know a rough estimate of what it might cost?
US, I think, was $280, which is not good now because US dollar is so bad. Yeah. But and I sort of said, people are like, oh, it's quite expensive. I'm like, yeah, but you spend a lot of money on race shoes. Yeah. And a race shoe might last you for for 3 or 4 good races. Yeah. Whereas this thing, I've had this one for 4 years, and it's still kicking along, Like, and the charge lasts for a long time. Yeah. So, and if you've got a target and a goal in mind, then and you've got the information available to you, then it's good to use it. But again, you've got to use it as a coach quite often. If I have athletes who don't really like using it, and I'm totally cool, some people don't find it that useful, I'll say to them, just use it anyway, because I want to collect that data because it means more to me than it does to you. Yeah, cool. Because I'd need then be able to go back to that athlete with the knowledge that they don't follow their power, but I can then look at how the output that they're doing in their workouts and manipulate that for me in planning it forward for them. Yeah. Knowing that, all right, this will actually work for this athlete because I know they're going to run at this effort or this pace. Yeah. I need to make sure that the power training that I've given them has matched up to be able to do that. Yeah, cool. And we may not talk about power effort, but as long as they're wearing it, I can at least see that value. And as a coach, that's really useful.
Okay. Awesome. So, Rob, before we move on to just our final wearable / sort of data information thing. So, obviously, there will always be people who will either not want to use any of it, or some people who are new to it and are just wanting to try maybe one of what we've sort of talked through today, maybe power meter on the bike aside, because as I understand it, almost every single triathlete has that.
Oh, they do now.
Yeah, nowadays. But which one do you view, if you had to choose one, what would you view as the most beneficial? What would provide you with the most information?
I would probably go to heart rate.
Yeah.
Because so there's 2 things. There's the thing you get out of a heart rate is the intent of the athlete. Yes. What you get with power is the output. So the output can be affected by so many different variables. But if the number that you're seeing is the effort the athlete's putting into what they're doing in terms of their workout or their race, then that's a huge benefit to be able to know that. Yeah. Quite often I'll have athletes that, and I get annoyed with it actually. I do tell them they'll do a workout with a power meter, but they won't have a heart rate, and it's like, it doesn't tell me anything. Yeah, like I can see what you're putting out, but I don't know what you put into it. Yeah. Like
how's your recovery going to go? Are you going to smash Is that you just smashed yourself and unable to do the next 3 workouts?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and did you just have a really good power value, but you've sent yourself to the wall? Yeah. Because all I can see is one side of the story. So give me both sides of it. So yeah, I get annoyed if they don't use a heart rate monitor. So, And I don't understand why they don't use a heart rate monitor. Like, maybe it's uncomfortable. Well, now we've got a solution around that. Yes. I'll accept that sometimes the batteries run flat. We can get away with that. But yeah, the heart rate's probably the number one. The other thing that I think, what was I going to say? There was one other interesting thing. Anyway, it'll come back to me. I do want to touch on continuous glucose monitors.
Yes, so the final one that I want to talk about. Yeah,
I haven't done anything with them. So, one other thing. Sorry, I'll take you back.
Yeah,
I wish lactate was more accessible to the general athlete population. Lactate, and I believe that's probably what the Norwegians are doing to be so effective in their training. I think lactate, even though it's an old measure, I think it gives probably the one of the most reliable pieces of information for us.
Because I see Dr. Hannah Wells on her Instagram, and I can see at the end of, say, this was just like a couple of days ago, and of course she trains under Bev, who's our great mate, and I'm pretty sure it looks like she's got some testing stuff here, and I wondered if that was lactate that she might be using.
I reckon so, and I wish like I've even asked if some places if I can get hold of one, and the testing units aren't too bad. It's the test strips that are so expensive. And it's like, man, can't they just, like, they can make heart rate monitors so cheap. Yeah. And, they talk about them being, medical grade accuracy and stuff like that. Well, just give me a lactate test that's reliable. Yeah. Because that would probably be the most effective thing, because that way we're seeing how the body's adapting to the work and how that adaptation has taken place over time. Yeah. And if you can see an athlete's doing intervals and they're outside of their target lactate, then you got to change those intervals.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, that would be man, if there and there for a while there was a sock, a calf sock that was claiming to be a non-invasive lactate measure. Don't think it worked very well.
No.
But I thought, man, wouldn't that be wicked? Like if they could build a optical lactate unit like this,
amazing.
Life would be so easy. But yeah, so I think that's probably one thing that we're missing in the general age group population is easy access to that sort of stuff.
Well, we don't know yet what's in the expo at Kona.
Oh man, hopefully
in a couple of days have a debrief as to any surprise, interesting things, because you just never know.
Yeah,
something might be sort of hiding.
So
the gears.
Tell me about glucose monitors then. I mean, would we want to use one or not?
To be honest, Rob, I don't know how applicable they are to an athlete's understanding of their requirements outside of what they can already tell when they're running along, running out of fuel.
Yeah.
You know, like at the moment, it appears that those continuous glucose monitors are still playing catch up on where your blood sugar is at.
Right.
And maybe that will change, and I'm sure it will. And I had Taylor Sittler on, and he is head of research and development at Levels, which is sort of runs aside Super Sapien, if you like.
Yeah.
And we know that the interstitial fluid, the glucose measured in that is a touch behind what you might see in the actual bloodstream.
Okay.
So and I know that at the minute they're like the companies like Levels and like Super Sapiens are collecting a bunch of data on our elite athletes, and they have all of this information about them. But I just don't know how they're going to use that. You know, like from a sort of day by day perspective, super helpful to give athletes an understanding of how foods affect them and their training. Like if they notice that they're eating foods which spike and then crash their blood sugar, and then they wonder why their afternoon training's so rubbish, whether that will help them make those links. Even though probably a professional, like a dietitian or a coach or a nutritionist, may be able to make those links anyway. Sometimes having that data right in front of them is actually the catalyst for them to change behaviour. So behaviour change could be one, but I think the jury is out as to the usefulness whilst training.
Are they exactly the same as diabetics would use? Or is there some differences there?
Yes, they are, but the apps are different.
Oh, okay.
So the apps are the thing which really are able to pull out the data, but the actual units themselves are same, and they just integrate with it, which surprises me that we are unable to access them in New Zealand and Australia. Yeah. If, you know, it's a matter of the app being available, because the unit is the same.
Yeah, I believe they're quite expensive.
They are $90 for 14 days.
That's a lot of money.
It has a lot of money, but you would use it for a 14-day period, potentially to give us an idea of how your usual diet impacts you. And then actually where it would be helpful would be for an athlete in their base training, if they're wanting to do some fat adaptation, which you know I'm a massive fan of, and I understand you have some interest in it, but you keep eating too many pineapple fritters.
Man, no. But
outside of so
I have good moments.
Yeah, I know, just teasing that, Rob. But for that base phase training, like when you're trying to do fat adaptation, understanding how sleep, how stress, and how food impacts their blood sugar, which then obviously changes their adaptation to being able to burn more fat. That could be helpful.
Yeah, the other thing I kind of have a feeling around with some of this information is we're getting this information, but we don't know what to do with it as well. So Power Meters came out with a left-right measure to say, 45% left, 55% right. People say, well, that's pretty good. And it's like, well, is it? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
how do we know?
Yeah, how do we? And by the way, what do we do with that information? So start doing single-legged squats. I don't know. You tell me. So sometimes you're like, well, yeah, we can have this information available to us, but right now it's not actually giving us much what we need. But if they're collecting data, and 2 or 3 years down the track we have this super reliable machine which can tell us all this information, then that's cool. Let's see it.
And I actually think if I'm a geek about it, I think that those continuous glucose monitors would be super helpful in athletes who are lean. Yeah. Who think that because they are lean, that it doesn't actually matter what they're putting into their body, particularly the lean athletes who are also performing well.
Yeah.
because we both know that being a healthy athlete is actually really different from being a high-performing athlete. They're not necessarily integrated. So you want both. And actually we know health actually doesn't matter that much to performance in the short term, but the longevity of the athlete really is dictated by how healthy they're able to remain. And look, we know this, and we know from the recovery and the training standpoint that the diet stuff is so important. So if you're an athlete out there doing a 2-hour zone 2 ride and chewing down gels and Cliff Bars and the rest of it, then, and if you get that real-time data as to what's happening to your blood sugar, or either in the session or later, then that might be enough to spur them to change behaviour.
Yeah, and I think the whole story that I'm giving my athletes, because a lot of them will underfuel at the wrong time, thinking it's giving them the right thing, and it's like you have to fuel for the training you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you've got a hard workout, you need to
fuel that.
Yeah, otherwise you're not going to be hitting those targets that we talk about.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll be disappointed. And it's such a challenge. It's like, why do you want to make life harder?
It's interesting, Rob, because of course you know that over the years I've really changed my what I recommend people do. And there'd be a time when I'd tell them to always have carbohydrate. Then there was the time I told them never to have carbohydrate. And now, like you, I'm on that. You've got to fuel for the work required. Because when you go into a hard workout and underfuel, then that is going to set you up, one, to not hit your target and get as fit or as trained, and then adapt as well. But two, it's really going to change what you do for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and the other thing is in the end, all we're doing is training for a race.
Yeah.
And in that race, you need to be fueling.
Yeah.
And if you're not practicing your fueling, and like we practice everything else for our race, why don't we practice one of the most important things that's going to get us to the finish line? Yeah. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts around, probably going too long now, but around as we come into the heat.
Yeah.
The energy utilization is so much higher in the heat.
Yeah.
But the difficulty in taking in that energy or those calories is so much harder. Yeah. How does an athlete get around that challenge?
Well, I'll keep it short, Rob. They get fat adapted.
Ah, nice.
And therefore, because your glucose utilization is so much higher, your ability to rely more on your fat will help delay that reliance on glucose. And so it's never about no carb, and I know that you know that.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not, and of course there'll be an element of training to sort of reach your peak carb sort of usage. But, and I think this is where Matt Kerr has really been sort of schooled in this arena as well. So he's the New Zealand athlete who
wins everything.
He's amazing, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Grant about his coach and our mate, about his strategy. But I think you just need to get more fat adapted.
That's the secret. So it's all about adaptation. Heat and fat.
Yeah, exactly. Rob, this has been awesome, and we will catch up soon again to bring more sort of Hawaii Iron madness to Mikkipedia.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to the expo and see what's hot.
Yeah, same. Cheers, Rob.
Let's get a beer.
All right, team, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation that I had with Rob, and I think he's got so many great practical tips for athletes and coaches alike as how to use the data. But of course, the importance of intuition for the athlete certainly isn't discounted in the face of all of this additional technology. And that's like the key, right? To really be able to marry the two together to be able to optimize training, recovery, and performance. So keep an eye on your downloads this week in your podcast app. Please like and subscribe to Mikkipedia if you don't already, because we will be bringing more of these episodes as the week progresses. Not only the training side of things and the Kona side of things, but of course the sports medicine conference as well. So thanks as always for listening. You can catch me over on Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, on Instagram and Twitter at Mikki Williden, and on my website, mikkiwilliden.com. See you next time.